at the Cordon Bleu London, we have a variety of different diploma and certificate programs, but today, of course, our focus is patisserie. Chef Circle here, our teaching chef, and Chef Julie will be demonstrating a dish called isfan. This recipe will be sent to you tomorrow, just so you can have a look through it and understand the process. After the demonstration finishes, we'll be going through a questions and answers session. If you have any questions about the course, the entry requirements, visa requirements, we'll be more than happy to kind of talk them through you. And we also have a live stream at the back that we'll be answering questions from as well. If you guys have any other questions that you might think of later, we'll give out our cards, and you can contact us that way. If you are interested, myself and my colleague Freddie will be doing a tour of the campus after we finish. And of course, when the demonstration finishes, there will be tastings as well, which is obviously the best part. So I hope you will enjoy, and I will give you over to Chef Circle.
Chef, do you want to start?
Okay, welcome everybody. Oh God, that is loud. I'm not sure I need that actually, to be honest. I'll do it for you guys at the back, sorry. Welcome everybody. Thank you for giving up your time to join us with this very exciting open house presentation. As you've just heard, myself and Chef Circle are from the pastry department, hence the recipe this evening. We are making, it's a little bit of a classic flavour pairing, but with a slightly modern edge. So although the Cordon Bleu is very traditional, oh, sorry, hi, welcome, it's okay. Although Cordon Bleu is very traditional in its history and our technique, we evolved the technique to meet the needs of our market. And obviously, the students who leave us now are very different to those who left us 20 years ago. So our recipes and our methods are updated regularly. The recipes we're looking at tonight are a combination, actually, from our classic cycle, which is our basic, intermediate, and superior levels, and our patisserie innovation and wellness program. So that's our 4th level. So people who graduate from superior are able to go and enroll on that. As an advanced education, if you like. So it encourages them to develop their own concepts and ideas and looking at ways to meet the modern market where you're reducing sugar, reducing fat, and using healthier ingredients. Not saying we don't love butter at the Cordon Bleu, we do. We're never going to get away from that. But we do add a little bit of healthiness in there somewhere. So we've got a few of those courses that we run, which are very, very popular. So Chef Circle, do you want to crack on?
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Cordon Bleu. My name is Circle. I'm one of the pastry teaching chefs in Cordon Bleu London. So actually, I was a graduate in here as well. So 10 years ago, I studied the pastry diploma. Chef Julie was my chef at that time. And then after graduate, I started working for the cafe downstairs, start learning how to turn my learning to practical in the industry. And then since 2 years ago, I came back to the school, start teaching along with our amazing pastry chef here. So tonight is all about for you to have a taste on how a class, running in Cordon Bleu feels like. And this is why, like my colleague explained before, we are going to send you the recipe later. The focus is not really on the recipe quantity. The idea for tonight is for you to understand how we teach in the school, and then so that you can have a brief idea how it feels like, to study in Cordon Bleu. So for the recipe tonight, I am going to make a Varine dessert, which is a dessert in a glass. The flavor pairing is called isfan, which is created by a very famous French pastry chef called Pierre Hermé. So isfan essentially is a combination of raspberry, lychee, and rose. Pierre Hermé created this flavor combination and then made a very famous macaron with this flavor pairing. So tonight we are going to make a twist, on this flavor pairing. Instead of doing a macaron, we are going to make a Varine glass dessert. So to start with, I'm going to use the raspberry to make a raspberry juice. In the bowl, I have a frozen raspberry. Together, I'm going to put some icing sugar to give some flavor. And then we are going to put it onto a hot water bath to let it sit for 45 minutes. So inside fresh raspberry, there is a lot of water content. This water will turn into ice when you freeze the raspberry. So the water crystals is a very, very sharp crystals. And then during the freezing process, this ice crystals inside the raspberry. We start poke through the membrane of the raspberry. When we cook it on the water bath like this, we will release all the beautiful raspberry juice from the raspberry, and then eventually we can get a very clear, we call it a consommé, okay, or like a clear raspberry juice for our next preparation. So to start with, I'm going to just let the raspberry and icing sugar to sit on the water bath for 45 minutes. Next, I'm going to prepare a panna cotta using raspberry puree. So a classic panna cotta is using cream, milk with gelatin, okay, in order to have a set layer. Today, because we are doing a raspberry rose flavor, instead of using cream and milk, I am using raspberry puree together with oat milk. The idea is to reduce the fat content in the recipe so that we can have a lighter texture and then less heavy for our guests as well. Okay. For the ingredients, we have the oat milk. Okay, it's a sugar-free oat milk in the saucepan. Then I will combine a little bit of sugar just to give a little bit of sweetness because the oat milk itself doesn't contain any sugar. So a little bit of sugar, and then I'm going to mix it with a plant-based setting agent called IOTA, I-O-T-A. So in a classic panna cotta, we always use gelatin. Okay, but nowadays not everybody wants to consume gelatin, especially if this sauce is from pork. Okay, so instead of using pork gelatin, I am using this plant-based setting agent, which is extracted from seaweed. Okay, so I have the sugar and the IOTA inside the pot. To start with, I'm going to heat up the oat milk, raspberry puree ready on the side.
So you find recipes like this, we've taken a classical panna cotta, we've removed the animal products from it, so it's suitable for vegetarians, vegans, and also those who want something a little bit lighter. So we study a lot of alternative ingredients in our plant-based program that we're running. There's a plant-based patisserie, which is taking intakes for next year. We also do an online plant-based 10-day program, which is run from home. So if you don't fancy coming to central London every day, you can certainly do that online. But we look a lot during our program, especially in the fourth level, the patisserie innovation and wellness, we look a lot at plant-based setting agents. There's a huge demand right now for things that are plant-based, certainly not gelatin and certainly not full-fat cream. So it's really on trend at the moment, and it's not going anywhere. That trend is going to stay for a long time, I think.
Yes. So just now what I have done is I have, sorry?
Yep, you can substitute agar-agar. It's a slightly different setting agent, so the way it sets. So agar gives you brittle strands, where IOTA gives you a more supple strand, so it's less springy. So
the idea is today we want to mimic a classic panna cotta texture. So that's why we are using this seaweed-based setting agent called IOTA. If you're using agar-agar, it's also a plant-based setting agent, but with agar-agar, it's more like a crunchy jelly. So it's not as soft as usually we have with panna cotta. Okay. Yes, but then if you don't have enough agar-agar, then it will not set properly because you need a certain amount of contact in order to set the liquid. So there's a beautiful balance in between. And this is why it's very important to understand the different ingredients so that when you become a chef, you have more freedom to choose whatever ingredient that fits your needs. And then here, we are trying to show our students different ingredients and then how to adapt in different situations. So eventually, they can have their freedom, okay, to develop their own one. So now I have already added the IOTA and the custard sugar inside the oat milk. We are going to bring this to boil because for this IOTA setting agent, it has to reach the boiling point in order to activate, to set our oat milk and the raspberry puree. I didn't put the raspberry puree at the beginning. The reason why is because the more we cook the fruits, the more color we're going to lose, the more flavor we're going to lose. This is why I'm only adding this at the end of the cooking in order to maximize, to keep the color of our raspberry puree and also the flavor as well. So now I add the raspberry puree in, give a quick stir, make sure everything is well combined. The recipe today I'm making is relatively small, so it takes quite short time to make.
So, raspberry puree, when you cook it for a long time, it turns purple. So it's got quite a strong blue tendency, so you have to be really careful. Otherwise, you end up with something that looks like purple sweet potatoes, which is not what you want.
Okay, so then we can put it into the glass. So a Varin dessert was first created by a French pastry chef called Philippe Cotticini. he's still alive. And then if you have been to his pastry shop in South Kensington, he has a very famous giant croissant, which is like very Instagrammable. He's the pastry chef who first created a dessert in a glass. The idea to have a dessert in a glass is to give our customer to see every single layer what you are eating within the glass. Okay, so this is why we call it a marine glass dessert. So now I have the panna cotta already piped inside the glass. We will let it sit inside the fridge so that it can be set before we can build up the layers. So now this one into the fridge.
Just a word of warning, if you have very fine crystal, don't put something hot in it. Okay. You can also do this in, you can buy little desserts, like they're very, very ornate. They're a lot smaller than that, usually quite short with the stem. They work really well also.
So a quick clean down.
So what do you use if you haven't got one of those, Chef?
Sorry?
What do you use if you haven't got one of those fancy pieces of kit?
This is a little piston, which is help us to distribute the liquid easier. And then so that is less messy and easier to control as well. And because all the foam are sitting on the surface, so whatever coming downward without any foam on the top. Okay? So the panna cotta is done. Next one, we are going to prepare a raspberry lychee compote to go along with the panna cotta. So let me prepare the ingredients. So in the school, apart from teaching our students the technique on how to make a good pastry, another thing we really focus on is the health and safety. Because after all, as a chef, we are providing food, okay, for our customers. We have to make sure all our food are safe to eat, okay, and this is why the food hygiene is really important. Also, work safety is very important as well, because after all, we are handling fire, we're handling knives, so we make sure our students understand how to work safely and clean in the kitchen. So for example, when we use our chopping board, we always have to have some wet tissue paper underneath to secure the chopping board so it doesn't move around, okay? So for this raspberry compote, it's very, very straightforward. First of all, we have some fresh raspberry. So the idea for this dessert is to keep all the freshness from the fruits. So quickly slice the raspberry. We try to tell students when they are using knife, don't chit-chat. Otherwise, it may cut your fingers. This is why lesson number 1, when you attend our pastry diploma, is always start with knife skills. Oh no, 0 class is health and safety, food hygiene. Yeah, food hygiene, and then knife skills.
So as part of the diploma, you are automatically enrolled on a level 2 food hygiene program. So you have to do that as one of the first things before you come in the kitchen. So you already get a little test, which is good because, you know, that lasts you a good two or three years. When you go into industry, you need to have that anyway. So we make sure our students are fully aware of what they need.
Mm-hmm. So now I am dicing some canned lychee. I'm from Hong Kong. So lychee is a fruit that I'm very familiar with. And then, hello. And then, so when I was a kid, my grandma's garden has a very big lychee tree. And then that was my childhood memory, to climb up the tree in the summertime to pick the lychee. In Europe now, is of course, we don't have fresh lychee all season. This is why to have a good consistency on the flavor, we will use the canned lychee. So just dice it smallly, put it inside the bowl. To add additional flavor and balance the sweetness from the lychee, we are going to add different flavoring, okay, to marinate our fruits. First of all, we have white balsamic vinegar. Goes in. A little bit of maple syrup, okay, to balance out the acidity from the vinegar. Rose water to give us a touch of rose flavor. And a dash of water, okay, just to mix all the ingredients together. Give a gentle stir. And then we will let the fruit sit inside the juice for about 10-15 minutes to absorb all the nice flavor before we're going to use that. So to keep the food safe, before we put it inside the fridge, we always clean the bowl. Into the fridge. That's it. Clean down. So in school, we always encourage our students clean as you go, meaning every time when you finish one task, clean down your station, quickly clean down your equipment before you move on to your next task. This is the way to keep ourselves more organized in terms of our station area. Okay, so when we work in the industry, when we try to hire new chefs to the team, what we look into is more on their attitude and their organization and hygiene more than technique. Because technique you can always train. But if a person comes in, it's already very messy, it's very hard to change that. This is why we believe this is very important in the school. When they start learning, they start putting in this organization and hygiene in their head so that they can keep it from the very scratch.
And that's more important in our kitchens when there are 16 students working together, trying to jostle. Well, everyone has a metre square station, so they've got their own stove, their own workstation, their own shelves in the fridge. But, you know, obviously if you're working next to somebody who's really messy, that's the person you want to get away from. You want to stay as far away as you can, which is not always the case. So we mark that every day. That's one of our daily grades. We mark them on their organisation and hygiene. So if they're not very good at the beginning, they certainly should be by the time they leave us on superior.
Okay, so now I need to do a little setup for our next recipe. Okay, next one. Now we have the panna cotta. We have compote. Okay, so the panna cotta is kind of creamy texture, and compote gives us a bite. Next level, we want to have something more aerated. So we are going to make a mousse using lychee puree together with a touch of rose water. Before we make the mousse, okay, we need to prepare a setting agent that can set the mousse so that it doesn't become runny or liquid. Okay. The first recipe, when we make the panna cotta, we use a plant-based setting agent, Yota. Okay. For this recipe, we will stick to the classic using gelatin. Okay. So in the school, we will always start with teaching our students classic technique, classic ingredients, so we learn from the basic. After that, slowly from basic to intermediate, superior, we are going to migrate to more modern ingredients or more ingredients that is more related to current trend, so that our students are equipped with like classic method and also modern method, so that whatever when they go into the industry, they can fit whatever the environment that they're working with. Okay, so for the mousse, first of all, we need to prepare a gelatin base. Today, we are using fish gelatin powder. So when we talk about gelatin, most of the time we are referring either gelatin leaf or gelatin powder. Gelatin leaf, most of the time, is come from the ligament of pork or beef. And today, we are using the fish gelatin powder. Okay. And then now here, I have 10 grams of gelatin powder. They come with like dry consistency. Before we can use it, we need to rehydrate it with some water. So this is why I have the water here. So all you need to do is put the gelatin powder into the water. Give a gentle stir so that the gelatin powder is starting to soak up the water. Okay. And then this process will take around 20 minutes before the gelatin powder can be fully rehydrated. If you are not using gelatin powder, you are using gelatin leaves. It's the same idea, but instead of adding water like this, you will soak the gelatin leaves into icy water. So different source of ingredient from pork or from fish, but the idea is the same. You want to rehydrate it before you're using it. So once it is hydrated, it will be something look like this. Okay, do we have a close-up camera? Yeah, so in the demo room, we always have different angle of the camera so that we can show the details to the student. So when it is completely rehydrated, you will see it's set already like a jelly itself. This is what we call a gelatin mass and then ready to use. So I'm going to use this for making the mousse. So to make a lychee mousse, of course, we are going to use a lychee puree. Interesting enough, the lychee puree we can buy on the market, okay, actually they are quite liquidy, very, very runny, watery, okay? And then out of 100 grams of lychee puree, they always have 10% added sugar. This is why when we use lychee puree, we need to be very careful on additional sugar put into the recipe. And usually, because lychee itself is very subtle in terms of flavor. So for today, for the lychee puree, what I have done is I have reduced the puree into half quantity. So I took 500 grams of lychee puree. I put it on the stove, let it just boil it until I reach 250 grams. So half of the water has been evaporated away in order to condense the lychee flavor. This is a very efficient way to enhance the flavor of the fruits without adding any additional artificial flavoring. Okay? But as you can imagine, by reducing the water content, meaning the sugar is more intense here now, because less water, meaning ratio-wise, you got more sugar inside. This is why for this mousse, I'm not going to add any additional sugar in. Okay, just to make sure we don't input too much sugar. After all, nowadays, people tend to have more healthy, okay, style dessert, okay? So now I have the lychee puree in the pan, and then I'm gonna add the gelatin mass inside to melt the gelatin. On the side, we will ready a bowl to cool down the base. So this mousse recipe is a very classic mousse recipe. Ingredients very simple. We have the flavor, which is the lychee puree. We have a setting agent, gelatin, and then an aerated texture, which is from the whipped cream. Later, I'm going to show you how to whip the cream. So how will you think about mousse? What is the texture usually? When you eat a mousse, what are you expecting? Light, aerated, melt in your mouth. Okay, an ideal mousse, when it's a good texture, it always automatically melt in your mouth. If you find out that one day you have a spoon of mousse, you need to use your tongue to push in order to melt it, meaning it contains too much gelatin inside. There is different reason to put more gelatin. For example, when I was working in Hong Kong, in summertime, outside 35 degrees, if you don't put enough gelatin, the customer, when they bring the cake home after 1 hour on the bus, the cake gonna melt. So no choice, the chef has to put more gelatin. But if your dessert is going to serve in a restaurant with air conditioning, eat straight away, of course, we can reduce the gelatin content so that we can have a better mouthfeel. So after all, it's very important to understand what is the function of the product and then how to adapt to your situation. So in the school, we always show this, explain to the student different theory behind on the ingredients. So in the classic cycle, we are not only giving demonstration or practical class, we also have theory class to go through the theory behind different ingredients, what is different type of cream, how to pasteurize milk, or what is the function of sugar, so that our students can be more equipped themselves to understand, okay, if I want to replace sugar, what can I use? What is the impact? So it's very important not only understanding the practical skills, but also understanding the theory behind. And I think this is why 10 years ago I chose Cordon Bleu. Because at that time, I think I can talk about this. Because 10 years ago when I like decided to like become a pastry chef, where to go? And in fact, Cordon Bleu was my dream since I was a kid, because my first cookbook was a Cordon Bleu cookbook. And I was like, one day I need to come here and study. And then when I compared different learning curriculum, course structure between different culinary schools, and then I find out, and also a lot of comments online as well, and then I find out the structure in Cordon Bleu is really balancing not only the technical technique, but also a lot of theory classes as well. So really can back me up when I need to like have a full range of learning. So now the gelatin is melted. We can let it cool down on a bowl. At the same time, we will start whipping up the cream. So the cream I'm using today is a 35% whipping cream. So whip it up. Keep an eye on our raspberry juice. Just give a shake so that all the raspberry can be melted equally. So in our classic cycle, we start with basic. In basic program, we already start teaching students how to make a classic mousse, like the recipe I'm showing you now. And then when students move on to intermediate, we start showing them alternative way to make a mousse. For example, instead of using whipping cream, we show them using aqua fiber, which is the chickpea water, to make a plant-based mousse. And then when they migrate to superior and even or the advanced program, wellness, pastry wellness, we further show them how to reduce the sugar content in a mousse, how to make a mousse without any cream, any fat content. Okay, simply using egg whites. Okay, to make a mousse, it works as well. So that is a graduation progress, but then in different level, we're going to add more so that they can have a full picture on like how classic recipe looks like and how a modern recipe looks like. Now I need to whip the cream. So in the class, in basic and intermediate, basically the student has to do everything by hand. Okay, today we have a lovely student assistant with us today. She's McKenna. Currently, she's studying our grand diploma. So she's studying both cuisine and pastry. She's in intermediate level now. And then later, maybe you want to talk to her, see how she feels as a student in Cordon Bleu. And yes, in intermediate and basic, everything has to be done by hand. Everything whipped by hand, so that's why we have strong arms. Okay. The idea is for students to understand how to do everything by themselves. So what if one day there's electricity shortage? You can still work with it. Okay, and it does happen. So it's very important to learn the essential, and after that, everybody can learn how to use the machine in 5 minutes. Okay, so now I have the cream ready. As you can see, we have something, okay, with the cream is light and aerated and cold, but our lychee puree with the gelatin is still very runny and hot. This is why we cannot combine them now. Otherwise, all the heat from the puree will melt the whipped cream and then we will lose all the aeration, okay? This is why now we need to use an ice bath to cool down our lychee base. So put it onto the ice bath, cool it down, until it reaches close to the setting point. So another interesting learning way is that in the school, we try to encourage students to feel everything by their fingers, okay, by tasting themselves, instead of relying on thermometer or equipment. Because after all, if you are too reliant on equipment, what if the equipment is not accurate? And what if you don't have the equipment with you? So for example, in intermediate, we never let them using thermometer. They have to touch, okay, to feel what is cool feels like. And then to understand, okay, how it is. And then when you are in superior, in the advanced level, then we'll talk more about how to use the equipment to be more efficient. Okay, so quickly cool down until close to the setting point. This is why it's very important not to cut your fingers in class, so that we can check with the consistency with our fingers. A little bit more. So we need to keep stirring so that they can all the lychee puree can be cooled down evenly. And patience for pastry is really, really important. It's really important because some steps you just can't rush. For example, to cook a classic pastry cream, you have to cook it to boil. You have to cook until all the flour is cooked out. Just can't rush. Okay, now this is cooled down. Take away the ice bath. And then now we can combine the puree with the cream. So just actually follow. After that, we will transfer this into a piping bag so that we can pipe inside the mousse, inside the glass. Into the piping bag. So mousse is ready. Before we pipe the mousse inside the glass, first we need to apply our compote in the middle. So now the fruits are already marinated for some time. Raspberry lychee rolls always work. With a touch of acidity from the balsamic vinegar, can always cut through the sweetness to have a balanced flavor. So, compote in the middle. And then we can pipe the mousse on top. Cover the fruit. Make sure that same size. That's it. Now we can put the mousse into the fridge, let it set. Be very careful. That's it. Any questions so far? All good? Later you're going to try the dessert. We have prepared some tasting for you guys. Okay, so let me quickly clean that. Okay, so now let's have a look on our juice. Can we have the close-up, please? Yes. So be careful with the steam because it's very, very hot. So as you can see, now we have a lot of liquid coming out, okay, from the raspberry. So what we are going to do is we're going to strain out the juice. This process usually takes minimum 2 hours, okay, depending on how much fruits you have. For today, we have a bit shorter time, so we have to speed up a little bit. But usually, it will take up to 2 hours. In the industry, what we will even do is that we will marinate the sugar with the fruit overnight so that the fruit will start to defrost and then start extracting juice. And then the next day, we're going to put it onto the hot water bath and then cook it for 2 hours before we strain out the juice. The idea is we want to get something very, very clear. This is why I am not going to use the spatula to push down, because I don't want to have any fibers from the raspberry to go through into my juice. Okay, so we'll let this strain slowly. Okay. While we prepare our decorations. Okay. Thank you. So while my dear student assistant preparing the tasting for you guys, I'm going to show you how to prepare the decoration, okay, for our furring glass. So for today, we are going to make a crystallized rose petal, because after all, it's science all about rose, raspberry, and lychee. So I have the edible rose, okay, fresh edible rose. Get myself a piece of paper. And then can we have the close-up, please? Thank you. Yeah, that's easier to see. To make sure I'm under the camera. Voila. Okay, so first of all, we will take out the rose petal. This is, especially before Valentine's Day or, yeah, Valentine's Day, this flavor pairing is always very, very popular. Okay, after you have the rose petal, I keep some fresh one, okay, for the decoration later. Next one, we are going to brush the petals with some pasteurized egg whites. And then on the side, we have some custard sugar. So we'll brush a thin layer of egg white to the rose petal.
So Chef Circle mentioned these are edible rose petals. So you can't just go out in your garden and pick a rose and eat it. Not all plants are edible. There is quite extensive lists online of growers that specialise in edible flowers, which are huge at the moment in the wedding cake market. They are a lot more expensive than regular flowers. So I know a few cake decorators who've been tempted to use stuff out of their garden, which is not correct, really. These ones are grown without pesticides, so obviously the end results can vary wildly. These are super expensive roses. They're about £15 a head, which is a lot, even for Valentine's Day. But you can preserve them like this. It's a great method of preservation. Crystallized roses always look cute. They're slightly frosted. I even use this technique on things like rosemary at Christmas. So I'll do a sprig of rosemary and use it on my Christmas cake. So it's a very versatile technique, but it dehydrates it with the sugar and it just preserves it. Keeps that lovely colour. It's very handy.
So I'm toasting the petal with the custard sugar. Just a thin layer.
It can be done with aquafaba. That'll work. Okay, it works the same way, it dries the same way. Water wouldn't, it just dries in globules, so it doesn't really stick. But aquafaba is good, or even a simple syrup would work. Egg white is the one that makes it crunchy, which is nice.
Okay, so after that, you will put the rose petal into a dehydrator, 60-degree, or into an oven, set it to 60-degree, then let it dry until become crispy and dry. So this one I did it before the demonstration. It's already dry in the dehydrator, and it becomes very firm and crunchy now. So this one I'm going to use it for the decoration later. So I'll keep some fresh rose petals, some crystallized. Presentation is very important. After all, our customers, okay, before they eat it, they will look on the dessert first. So we make sure we also teach our students how to have a good looking dessert to finish. Okay, it's done. So ready for the decoration later. Apart from the rose petal, I'm going to show you another way to decorate our verine glass by making a foam. Okay, so we have the raspberry juice here. We are going to use the raspberry juice to make a foam. First of all, we need to scale the ingredients. Can we have a close-up, please? Thank you. So as you can see here, the juice is very, very clear, okay? It's like, we call it like a consomme. So with the juice, we are going to put a bit of rose water, a little bit of sugar just to give flavor. It's the additional raspberry juice I prepared before. Together with an emulsifier called sucral amyl. So sucral amyl is an emulsifier that can create and stabilize the foam that we are going to make. So to make, it's very simple. First of all, we put the rose water in. We mix the sugar with the emulsifier. So this recipe actually is taken from our Pastry Innovation and Wellness program, which will teach our students modern pastry techniques. Then you're going to use the hand blender to combine ingredients together. After this is combined, make sure this is safe. Hand blender is a very efficient equipment, but it's also can be very dangerous. So we keep reminding students when you're using hand blender, don't talk. Okay, make sure you unplug it before you wash it, because nobody wants to lose a finger. Okay, so now the mixture is done. I'm going to create the foam using equipment called foam kit. Okay, so this is equipment called foam kit for us to make foam very easily and efficiently. So all we need to do is pour the juice inside the bowl. Put the head in, and then press start. And then what the foam kit does is it will start pumping air into the mixture. And then the stabilizer inside, okay, the mixture will start to stabilize the foam that created. So it will take a little bit of time. It sounds very fancy, right? Little foam kit like this. It costs about 60 pounds on Amazon. Okay? In fact, you only need to go to a goldfish pet shop, £5 a pound, exactly the same effect. Okay, everything labeled with pastry equipment is a lot more expensive. So of course, in the school, we need to show our students what is the equipment available on the market and what is the alternative. After all, when you understand what is the function of that equipment, we can always find a more user-friendly or easy to, down-to-earth option. So now, the foam, as you can see, it will start foaming up. And then to create this beautiful red color, natural, no coloring, okay, natural color of foam, okay, where we can start our finishing.
So the only thing with that kit is you just need to keep an eye on the bowl. Don't forget it's on, because otherwise it's like a bath with too much bubble bath in it.
And then the foam will stay more stable when it's in touch with a stainless steel texture. This is why I keep the foam mixture inside a bowl instead of in the plastic jar, because the foam will stay longer time. So when I work in the restaurant, what we did is we will start making the foam at the beginning of the surface, and then by the end of the surface, we will have a big bowl of foam, which is very, very stable, ready to serve at any time. So now I have the foam, I have the crystallized rose petal, fresh rose petal, and some fresh raspberry. So to start with, I'm going to scoop some freshly made foam. On the glass. As you can see, it's very, very stable. Give nice color and some wow effect to the customer. On the side, we will put the crystallized rose petal. The fresh rose petal. Together with fresh raspberry. Okay, so you can have this one. Okay, and this is it. This is a very simple but elegant with multi-texture, multi-layers of varying dessert called Ispan. So at the bottom, we have the panna cotta with raspberry and oat milk. In the middle, a raspberry and lychee compote. On top, a lychee mousse, go with a raspberry foam, and then a crystallized rose petal. So now we are going to prepare the tasting for you to try the dessert. At the same time, if you have any question regarding on our program, regarding on our administration, so feel free to ask your questions.
Hello. So, does anyone have any questions about the course, application process? Yes. So it depends. If you're looking to study our 9-month diploma, if you're an international student, you will need a student visa. If you're not an international student, you're British. Okay. So then all you'll need is just a proof, kind of a English certificate, B2 level. Or if you've worked in the UK, you can show proof of that as well. So there's a few different ways that you can show proof. But what I'll do to make it easier for everyone as well is I'm going to send an email tomorrow, just kind of giving you a general overview of what the application process looks like. But it very much depends on international students or pre-settled / UK students. But the English level, it's easy to prove if you just worked here, and you can show that as well. Oh, that works. Any other questions? Yes, that's completely. So any questions about the course, about what you've seen today?
What about visa? Everybody keeps talking about visa, but you mentioned last time that if you stay under 6 months, you don't need a visa.
Yes. So yeah, exactly. So it does kind of depend on the country as well, but for the majority of countries, you can come to the UK for 6 months or less without a visa. So you can study our intensive course, for instance. So the standard way to study the Diplôme de Pâtisserie is in 9 months, but we do offer an intensive 6 months. So in that case, you wouldn't need a student visa. You could just come on a standard visitor.
So you don't have to do anything then, right?
No, not necessarily. You'd still have to prove English.
Right, that's fine. I'm talking about the visa, right?
Yeah. Exactly, but there are some countries where you need a standard visitor visa, which obviously requires you to sort that, but depending on the country. So the only thing with the intensive though is you can't do the internship pathway, which for a lot of students is quite kind of a crucial area of the course, because it gives you that kind of first-hand experience in the industry, and that can only be taken with our 9-month program. So it's very much up to the student whether that's something they really want to go for.
What about health insurance for the students?
Health insurance.
International students study in UK, are they covered by that?
Covered by health insurance. I'm not entirely sure, but I can come back to you on that one. Is it Gabby?
Yeah.
Yes. So I've got your email. So I'll do my research and I'll come back to you on that one for sure. Any other questions? Yes. Yes, it is. Mm. It's basically it's desserts. There's also elements of sugar work, chocolate work, viennoiseries, which is croissants, butter enriched doughs essentially, so brioche as well. But the course, we're a classically French culinary school, so they'll be going through all the kind of techniques and the classics that you'll learn. So it's all sweet stuff, essentially. What kind of pastry?
Is it with pastry? The desserts are mainly with pastry.
Not all of them, but there are many desserts. Yeah, many desserts made with pastry. It depends. So you'll obviously go through the pâte sucrée, which is sugar pastry.
Is that looking at pastry diploma?
Yeah, exactly.
Pastry diploma?
Patisserie is basically the French word for
But it
pastry.
encompasses all kinds of desserts. So you start from the first couple of days you're learning about knife skills. Then you move on and you'll start looking at custards. So, you know, pastry creams, custards, fillings, meringues. Then you go into your sponges. So you'll look at, you know, Genoise sponges, the pound cakes, madeleines. That's all of them. Yeah, so the intensive is the pastry diploma, which is usually 10 weeks, 12 to 11 weeks, condensed. So you're going to be in school for 5 or 6 days per week, rather than just perhaps 3 or 4. But it's exactly the same material, it's just condensed. It depends on your personal circumstances and, you know, how much time you want to spend with us in a week. The actual hours of the course are exactly the same. But yeah, everything. I mean, everything. You do pastry, absolutely. You'll do tarts. You'll learn about making puff pastry, choux pastry, tart pastries. You'll learn about a little bit of bread on basic. You learn about what else? We go into mousses at the end. Okay, you'll learn about some petit fours, a little bit of chocolate work as well. So it's kind of like a basic introduction to all of those elements that we then go into more detail when we move through the course, going on to the intermediate level. Okay.
So the holidays are usually around a week to 2 weeks in between each certificate. So as Chef Circle mentioned before, it's like basic. Yeah, so it's the basic, intermediate, and superior. So in between them, you'll have a small holiday. It's not a massive holiday, but there is one. It doesn't appear to the level itself, half terms or something. Bank holidays, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the chance, you know, so for example, our students at the moment are just in their final exam periods now. So next week we wrap up the final exams and they graduate. Then we have 2 weeks in between before the next one starts. However, that's only once a year. The next term, when we finish, we have just a week. So, you know, it's no guarantee it's going to be a 2 week period. At Christmas, we tend to have 2 weeks so people can travel home, but that's about the longest, and the Easter one. With children in the UK academic, it doesn't always fall in line. So you would definitely need childcare for sure if you were going to do that. The way you might be able to make it work for you is doing the intensive, doing one of the intensive levels at a time, because that is sort of 7 weeks, 6 weeks to 7 weeks, depending on which term it is.
The full diploma is 9 months standard or 6 months intensive, but you can just do the basic first. So there are students who don't necessarily know exactly if they want to do the full course in one go, and that gives them the flexibility to decide whether they do want to continue. And the nice thing about the intensive basic is 2 intakes per year, 1 of them in the summer. So it's 6 weeks in the summer, and then you've got the basic certificate, and then you can kind of decide at that time if you want to continue on with intermediate. Again, you can do intensively. However, the superior level is always 3 months. Non-intensive. Too much.
Yeah, there's a lot of homework and report writings and things like that, so you need the extra time to study. Not really. No. Intensives take their exams next Wednesday, and then they start again in about 6 days' time. It's intensive. It's intensive. We live up to the name.
Sorry, accommodation. So we don't provide it, but we do recommend places to look for. So this is very much dependent on the length of the course you choose. obviously you're choosing a 3-month course and looking for accommodation. You're doing the full 9 months, maybe you look for somewhere to rent for a year. So this is very much dependent on the course that you choose. When I do send you all an email, I will link the accommodation site, where we recommend accommodation, just so you can have a look through. But always very good to do research.
As always.
In terms of doing the grand diploma, is there no option to do boulanger along with it? Does that have to be taken as a completely separate course?
Yeah, it does really. You can't. It's, to be fair, our students who do the pastry and boulangerie as well, there's no way they could fit cuisine in at the same time. That would be like, you'd have to do a 4-shift day. That's like my working week. You don't do that.
So the pastry, the boulangerie diploma goes very nicely with the pastry diploma. They kind of go hand in hand.
Supplement,
in a way. Yeah, exactly. So there are a lot of students that do the boulangerie with the pastry diploma, and it just gives you kind of a overall education and not just pastry, but of course bread as well. And it goes deeper into memoiseries, which is kind of croissants, brioche, kind of raisin, all those kind of delicious things that it can't go with the grand diploma. Because the grand diploma, you're doing roughly 40 hours of classes per week.
So that sometimes is going to be 6 days, over 6 days. It's not a 5-day week. It's quite often a 6-day. So to add in, for example, when we run our level 1, the BM1 students, they're here from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock on a Wednesday. So we couldn't then ask them to come in at sort of 8 o'clock the next morning. It's a bit much. So it doesn't really work. The students, you do need time to digest it and prepare for the classes for sure. And if you ask any of our grand diploma students, it's quite full on. It's quite full on. I mean, you're here a lot, right?
Here, on average, it's about 40 hours. And that's just in case if you do any sort of experience. So there's volunteering opportunities too, so you can get into different things and learn more things. And then partway through intermediate, there's actual work experience too. So on top of the stuff that you do, they replace some classes with it. But it's pretty intensive. But if you really, really like it, I would recommend, you can always split it up too. You can do the full diploma for cuisine, and then you can do the full diploma for pâtisserie. However you choose to do it, you can split it up, make it easier.
So you could do your pastry diploma and boulangerie and then do cuisine, or cuisine and then come back and do the other way around.
Yeah.
I think that's what
Yeah. Yeah, we have a lot of people come back actually who will do the grand diploma and then decide that actually they either want to do the PIW, the Wong program, or they want to do the bakery diploma and come back and do it that way.
And if you've done the grand diploma, is there any fast track into any of the steps of the laundry?
No, not really. Unless you've got prior knowledge from somewhere else, that could be considered. But generally speaking, they'll come back and do the 3. Of course, if you've got 10 years experience as a baker, we might let you jump basic.
So for the diploma, does it include already an advanced study on top, or is it separate?
The advanced study, that's very loud. The advanced studies come after the diploma. So you complete a 9-month diploma with us, and then the advanced studies are the internship pathway, for instance, diploma in patisserie innovation and wellness, and also diploma in culinary management. So each one of them is 3 months long. So if you wanted to do the grand diploma, hello? If you wanted to do the grand diploma, followed by all of them, you'd be studying with us for 18 months, for instance. You don't need to do...
You have to apply for at least 2 years.
So how it will work is essentially, if you were to apply for the grand diploma with all of our advanced courses, so DPIW, DCM, and internship, you'd have to apply for all of them when you send your application in. We will then sponsor your student visa for the entirety of all those courses, which would be roughly 2 years. So the internship is the only course that we do that you need to decide when you apply if you're going to do it. You can't decide halfway through your studies that you want to do the internship pathway. Reason being for that is there are classes with my colleagues that run the internship pathway that help you not only choose the restaurant you're going to go to, but also do kind of one-on-one sessions with you, practice your interview, and also, as I said, help you choose the restaurant you want to go to. So it's really important you decide when you apply. Yes.
So did I hear on the grand diploma there is some work experience between involved in some of it.
I don't know how to turn it. Is this on? It's on. Yeah, on the intermediate level, you do work experience at, well, there's a couple of sites it could be. So the work experience generally is at our restaurant Cord. So it's a proper restaurant. You go in as an assistant / commis chef and you'll work there for a day. You also visit there on Superior because we do a Superior event where we take over the restaurant. So if you're doing Grand Diplôme, you'll do one on cuisine and then you'll do an afternoon tea event for the pastry. So you'll be there twice. The other option is if we have pastry only students, they sometimes will go into our production kitchen downstairs where we do all of the preparation for the cafe and the bakery. So, you know, they'll be in one of those two sites. So they'll see a real cafe operation in real life and real time.
Mm-hmm.
And how does the internship offer work? You complete the 9 months and then 3 months in one place? Or is it
It's usually at one place, it's at one site, but throughout your study, you will have, as you said, you'll have meetings with the internship team and they will guide you as to where you think you're best suited. You normally have an option of 3. Towards the end, you'll visit the site, you'll maybe talk to the employers and then decide where it is you really want to go. As often people will change their mind, you know, you put the Ritz down and then end up going to the art, you know, wherever, you'll end up somewhere else just because the team's changed, or perhaps you didn't like the visit, or perhaps you actually have seen great things on Instagram from this place and that's an option. So it's always subject to change. So you put 3 to start with. By the time you get through nearer to going out into the industry, then you'll make your choice.
And it really is up to the student in terms of what your outcome is from the internship, because they range from Michelin star restaurants to 5-star hotels to standalone restaurants. It's really up to kind of what you want out of the internship. Of course, if you want to go to a Michelin star restaurant, many students are want to go to those ones. So there's not always a guarantee with any of the restaurants. Do you want to go Michelin, then of course that's a completely different experience to going to a standalone restaurant. So it really is up to you.
We've even got a student at the moment who's working with us in the production downstairs. So I say production, it's quite a derogatory term for it, but it's our cafe downstairs. You know, we make probably the best pastries in London for sure. This student, she said, you know, I would love to open up a cafe back at home when I go home. I don't really see myself in a Michelin star restaurant. And the place she was looking at, she was sort of umming and ahhing. And then we said, look, you know, we would welcome help downstairs if you're game, if you want to try it. And so she's actually completing her 3 months with us in about 2 weeks' time. So, you know, if it's whatever suits you as an individual and whatever your focus and goal is when you leave us, we're going to help you try to achieve that through the internship pathway.
Any other questions? Yes.
when we submit the application, do you have to provide any like health certificate or any?
Only if you need to, if you have a medical issue or if you need to declare something, then always absolutely you need to put that in your application. If not, then no. So the main things that you need for your application is a CV, updated of course, statement of motivation. So if you're choosing the Diplôme de Pâtisserie, you need to center it around patisserie. If you're doing the Grand Diplôme, if you're doing the Grand Diplôme, obviously you want to talk about that program. It's about 300, 500 words. Tell us a bit about you as well, of course. Highest academic certificate. So this is going to be any secondary education you've got. If it's high school diploma, GCSEs, A-levels, we just need to see proof of it. If you're an international student, as I covered earlier, you need English language proof. And depending on the course that you choose, if it's a 9-month diploma or a 6-month intensive diploma, you need to pay an application fee, which is usually 1,500. Also, you need your passport picture. The picture's going to go on your student ID, so make sure you like it. Yeah, and of course the ID page of your passport, so make sure it's not expired. See? So depending on the course you choose, if it's a 9-month program and you need a student visa, you need to submit your application no later than 11 weeks before the course starts. If you're a UK home student or you're doing an intensive diploma, it's 7 weeks before the course starts. So you just need to kind of make sure you know exactly what course you want to do. Reach out to us, myself, my colleague, and we'll be more than happy to give you the answers.
Do we need to translate, let's say, high school diploma?
Not necessary. Only if you have a degree that you need to transfer. Am I right, Freddie?
Can I ask which countries is that? Croatia. All right. It depends. So when you make your application, bring it over, send it over, upload it, everything. Then the admissions department will look into the diploma in a foreign language, and they will tell you whether you need to get it translated.
Yeah,
But
dependent.
make your application early if you know you're going to send it something like translation based. All right. That's very, very important. All right. It's not for us to decide. It's the application, the admissions department.
Yeah.
Because they have what Matilda had mentioned earlier. It depends whether you're going for the student visa route or the standard visa. Because the standard visa, the student visa route is much. There's a lot of red tape because we've got to deal with the UK visa immigration. So we want to make sure your application is not denied when we send it over to get CAS. CAS is confirmation acceptance studies. That's what you need this document. That you make your appointment with the British High Commission in your country where it's your residence to make an appointment to get a stamp in your passport before you enter the UK on the student visa. Right? Just upload everything, put everything up, then they will let you know whether they need any more documentation.
You're more than welcome to send it to me as well, and I can pass it over.
Any other
So-
questions?
Follow on from me. About the MSc Culinary Innovation Management in here, do you get to do a lot of cooking like in the Grand Diploma or?
So the MSc includes no cooking at all. So we have a bachelor's that you do cook. Part of it is cooking, but the master's programs, none of our master's programs include practical cooking sessions. So if your outcome is to learn technical cooking techniques, then you'd be better off doing a diploma at the Cordon Bleu.
So the master program is usually more theoretical, more theory-based, both of those programs. So it depends. So you have to know whether you want to, what Matilda mentioned, whether you want to go more on the practical side of it, or depending on whether you want to choose a cuisine, whether you want to choose a pastry or plant-based, you need to target a grand diploma, basically. Our school, we provide a lot of information here in the school in a way that we do a lot of practical, as Julie mentioned earlier. That's why. And I'm sure you need it, right? So there's a lot of theory-based as well. I used to be alumni here. I studied here in 2019.
Yeah, I taught him as well.
So if that's why I said you need to understand whether if you want to do management, the bachelor. So if you do the bachelor, so you do 50% of cooking and 50% management at the Burbank University. So it's a partnership with Burbank University. So Burbank University is about 15 minutes walk from here. So it's a 3 years or 4 years program depending on your what we call it UCAS tariff points. All right, you need to convert that basically. So how many points that you might have. But we do have students. I do have a student last year who joined the BBA program, and after 1 year he dropped off because he said to me he wanted to do more cooking. All right, so we do have students. That's why I say the course that you choose. We have a lot of courses here, so we want to make sure the courses is right for you. That's why when you have sent us a letter of motivation, we have to analyze it to make sure that if you apply for pastry, make sure you don't write something about cuisine, basically, because we might reject your application. Right? So we want to make sure that the course works for you, basically. All right? Any other questions?
I always have questions.
Yeah, that's fine. That's no problem at all.
So the students are here all day. Is there like a food hall, right?
We have-
their lunch or what?
We have a cafe. Students get a discount, a 15% discount on everything that's in the cafe. Yeah, the ground floor, exactly.
Pastry only, or
No, there's sandwiches,
hot soup,
salads.
So in the morning, usually we have there is like all the
Freddie likes
the
breakfast.
pastries. Then during lunchtime, about 11 o'clock, they have homemade bread with sandwiches as well and soups. And also cakes as well, desserts as well, So if you show your student card, you have 15% off. 15%. Not 15%.
Even I don't get 50.
Because one thing about when you are making the dish in the school, you might taste a lot of food. And one time you might not eat your food, you might give it to somebody else when you finish your food. The chef give evaluation. You might give it to your family because you say, "Oh, I taste too much of this." Right? Sometimes students like to come to the cafe because they want something different. Or because they're too intense in the kitchen, you taste too much of it.
There's a lot of bartering as well. the cuisine versus the pastry students. So the cuisinis, when they're finished, they usually eat what they make.
No, actually, I usually give mine at the chef's.
Okay. So they give them away somewhere, okay, or they will barter with another student and trade it off, okay. So there's always something going on. The students have fridges downstairs. There's a little student room that has there's a microwave in it and a water fountain and an iron, most importantly, to iron the uniforms. So a lot of students will eat what they make, but others will bring stuff in, or they'll buy something from the cafe.
What if you eat sweets every day for the next 9 months and you never want to...
Listen, we don't get to taste savoury. We're on sweet all the time. It's like, oh God. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. but I'm sure, I can promise you, you will never go hungry.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You never go hungry because when you do the demonstration, like what you see earlier, so you will see the demonstration before you go to the practical kitchen. So you have to sit for 3 hours and chef circle. Then you have to take a lot of notes. All right. Then at the end of the presentation, usually the students will come to the front, take a picture of the dish, and also there will be tasting portion for you to eat as well. All right. And you will ask the questions, any questions that you have in doubts during the presentation, any questions that you're not sure, then you ask the chef. All right. That if you have a back-to-back classes, you have half an hour break usually. So you go down to your locker room, get your kitchen attire that the chef is wearing, the wipe with your knife kit, and you might grab a coffee probably. You know, have a little break, look at your menu again. Then before you go to the kitchen, you will have another 3 hours to recreate the desserts what you have seen. On top of the demonstration we have here in the school, chef sometimes will give you extra demonstration. You will be shown extra recipes, but they will tell you which one that is required to be presented in the kitchen. So you learn a bit more. All right. I remember when I was a student here, we made apple strudel, a German apple strudel, but it's not French. But we got to understand because as a pastry student, as a pastry chef, you need to know all rounder basically. And we were shown also some English desserts as well. On top of that, but we're not required to do that in the kitchen. So there's some additional requirements. So it's nice for you to know the recipe, but in one day you might work somewhere that they ask you to do an English recipe. Of course. So you're not just making one dessert, but chef will show an extra another 2 recipes or 3 recipes. All right. Any other questions?
Do we have any questions
well, yeah.
from the back?
Sorry, we've got a question.
You're not allowed to refer to Le Cordon Bleu as where you give the course or something like that. Do you remember somewhere in your terms and conditions that you said that in no ways are students allowed to
You can't. I think I'm not sure if I understand, but I think what they're referring to is you cannot set yourself up as a Le Cordon Bleu cafe or a Cordon Bleu restaurant. But you could say, obviously, you're a graduate and you can have your diploma on the wall. And, you know, as you're part of your resume, that's factual. That's what you've done.
Yeah, I read that too. That's somewhere in your...
I think, yeah.
It was kind of strange because you graduate, but you can't really say
You can't call
No,
yourself
you
a
can. You
Cordon
can
Bleu outlet.
No, you definitely can. It's more as chef. You can't start a business saying as Le Cordon Bleu. I mean, you're more than welcome to tell everyone that you're a graduate. We actually do so. That's what's going to come further in the industry. So we definitely do recommend you wear it with pride.
So you might have a page of yourself and talking about your experience in the school. You mentioned that you are Le Cordon Bleu graduates doing a certain maybe diploma or diploma in pâtisserie, and you always have a profile page. But of course, if you own a business in the future, you want to have a stamp on your business.
Exactly.
You might have a little twist. You might have a French classical training that you have here at Le Cordon Bleu, but you might put your little twist, maybe a little Croatian dishes, ingredients in that. So you want to have, most chefs usually, they want to have a stamp on everything they do. All right? But of course, this one, what we want to say is we're giving you the foundation. All right? And after you graduate, then you're able to put whatever little Asian to maybe some pandan inside or some, some other exotic ingredients as well. So, chefs usually they like to have understand trick out in a way that what sets smart is. All right. Any other question, guys? All right. So okay. Oh yes.
Question at the back. Yes, thank you, Freya.
Good.
So the IELTS is for the student visa route. So IELTS, if you don't have a degree from a UK university, if you're an international student, if you don't have a degree from a UK university or a UK country, then you do need to do the UK IELTS. If that's the only way you can prove it with the student visa route. If you're talking about any of our other courses that don't require student visas, then you can either prove your English with an academic transcript of a course taught in English, a English B2 level certificate, proof of working in an English language environment. If you do not have any of those for the 6-month or less programs, then you can take our Oxford English test, which we actually operate here at the Cordon Bleu London. It's over the phone. So that will take place after you apply. So there's many different ways that you can prove it. Any other questions? Yep. No. So cake decorating is a gourmet and short course. I'm sure you know.
Actually, that's
much.
not quite
Oh,
right.
no. I'll take it back.
So intermediate, we're on the intermediate level. We have one celebration cake which is made. So they cover the very basics, but obviously we offer a gourmet
True.
course, which is more in depth and covers things such as gum paste flowers, wedding cake design, costings.
It very much depends. So they range from 1 day to 2 weeks, to
4
even
hours.
3 weeks to 4 hours. Yeah, it really depends on the course you choose. They can be. I mean, a lot of them are meant for kind of to be recreational. Not many of them are known as professional courses. So a lot of them, I would say the majority of them that are 1 to 4 days, they go from 11:30 to 6 with a half an hour break. I think, again, it will depend on the course you choose.
Yeah.
I mean, cake decorating, for instance, that definitely does give you incredible mouth skill. But then again, it's 2 weeks. So it is one of
10
our
days.
longer short courses. 10 days,
Yeah,
sorry.
some of the bread courses do. You know, you're talking about formulas and ratios. The pastry ones tend not to, because they're more for the kind of amateur that's interested, that really hasn't done very much. So it's maybe a little bit light for what you're looking for. Okay.
I'm just wondering if it's going to, because I think it's from morning to afternoon.
Right.
So I can already do stuff, but there's some things that my pastries are not perfect all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if the course would teach something that makes whatever you do consistently perfect each time.
I mean, we don't really go into that much depth in those short courses because they are short. So, you know, we've got a final product to concentrate on. The chef will do the demo the same way. He'll be in the room with you. He'll demo the product and then you'll go and make it. And you have lots of opportunities to ask questions. So one of the questions could be, how do I ensure this is the same every time I make it? Yeah, you get recipe handouts. I mean, you'll get a recipe, a document like this, and inside you'll have the recipe handouts of what you're doing. But there won't be additional information. It's focusing on what you're doing that day or in the course. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Thank you, Chef Julie. Any other questions? Yes, at the back, please. Yes, exactly. So as I mentioned earlier, the Boulangerie Diploma goes very, very nicely with the Patisserie Diploma. So the Boulangerie Diploma alone is 6 hours of classes per week. And just to give you a kind of overview of Boulangerie, it very much it goes into bread. So making all the different types of bread, learning how to make sourdough starters, and then of course sourdough, and also going really in depth into viennoiseries as well. So the nice thing about combining it with the Patisserie Diploma is not only are you learning a lot of extra skill, but if you're an international student and you want to do boulangerie, it gets a bit tricky because of the hours. But if you combine it with patisserie, then you have 21 hours of classes per week, and that actually meets the requirements for a student visa. So we do find that it just goes super nice, hand in hand with each other, and it's very popular.
Yeah, the students like it because it's a very different medium. In pastry, everything is focusing on learning a skill to produce a dish. And boulangerie, when you come in, it's more, it's a little bit slower pace because obviously you're dealing with a natural product. You have to wait for things to prove and have to develop. So the pace is a lot slower. So our pastry students certainly look forward to the day they do bakery because it gives them a breather, gives them a chance to kind of actually, all right, I've got all this and we're in control. Whereas sometimes in the pastry, it's quite fast paced, especially towards the end of the programs. It gets, the pace picks up quite a lot to make sure we get all of our learning outcomes in. So they do work really well hand in hand. There's minimal crossover. And, you will learn to formulate recipes and to, work on percentages and work on temperature ranges. So it's quite nice. They work really well together.
Thank you, Chef Julie. You're welcome. Any other questions?
You mentioned there is some baking in patisserie as well.
Yes.
There is. Yeah.
Yeah, there is. So it's definitely, it's touched upon for sure.
Exactly. So on basic, you'll make you'll do the very basic. So you'll do a soda bread and white dinner rolls. On intermediate, you will then touch, you'll go into doing your laminate dough. So croissant, pain au chocolat, focaccia, and the whole range of brioches. And we've got pain au lait, but that's it. Then we stop. So it's over a course of about 4 days. But that's all we do. We don't do any more then. And it's certainly when we have our students who are doing the bakery program alongside our regular students, they are far above, more competent at the shaping and the uniformity and all of those principles that come with practice. They're much better equipped at. Yes, we do it once, but we don't really harness it because we've got the bakery program for that.
Any more questions? So if anyone is interested in doing a tour, my colleague Freddie and I will take you around the building, and then we'll just basically take you down, showing the campus, and then we'll end on the ground floor. So if you do want to come for the tour, come with me. If not,
before that, can we give a clap to
yes, of course.
Absolutely.